So let's get right into this. What we wanted to discuss today is on 10-10-10. A lot of people were asking about what I was going to do personally on the 10-10-10 and what I had planned and what I thought should really go on. And I really, I go day by day, especially when it comes to a lot of the numbers. And I know what numbers mean. To me, 10 means omega, 10 means 0, 1. It's a binary code. So there's a lot that it really has to do with how this reality is constructed to me. And so what this was really about is this was about a big time transformation for me. I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. I was just going through my daily, as we call it, occultation. And I started to get a lot of hints of different things that were taking place and how it was building up to a certain point. And what this is actually building up to is the story of the world. And exactly why we're here, how we got here, what we should do about the situations that we're in, and things of that nature, things that we've really been having the greatest task at getting the answers to, especially out of our society. So, so basically to me what 10-10-10 is about, what we've done is we've taken the GB4000, and we're going to upload some pictures of that, but we've taken the GB4000, we've tied it into a RF booster, and we're broadcasting 528 hertz over the area that I'm at. We're kind of high in the mountains, and we're going to get this frequency to Earth, and we're not going to count on anything external to do that for us. We're going to do that ourselves, and we're going to link together with other individuals that are doing the same thing. We're going to bring about ascension to this dimension rather than just the stories about, hey, we're going to do this for you, and you need to give us this. I'm going to, what prompted this show also was the advent of the alien invasion information really coming out right now as being something that people want to know about and whether it's true. And I got a video that was going viral across the internet from a lady that says she's been in contact with aliens, and the aliens are telling her that it's going to basically be October 13th of this month when they invade our planet, which we're yet to see. But the fact of the matter is that we already deal with the planet extraterrestrial life. So this, of course, resets us a little bit from the aspect of, do we have extraterrestrials coming in contact with our planet? The answer to that is 100% yes. Even some of the individuals here being of some type of extraterrestrial nature, being the individuals that are here on this planet in human bodies. And as a friend of mine just said a minute ago, I said I was going to actually say on the show, finding out who you are may be a little weird. And especially if that information is just so far off of what they're telling you. But it is also empowering. Once you do know what you are and what you correspond to, it boosts your level of abilities. And so what we're going to first get into is, I started to put this basic video together. And it was called Alien Invasions First Take Place in the Mind. And because if people would understand, they had to rewind on how worlds are actually constructed, they would understand that worlds are constructed with words. And that's why the words are so similar to each other, world and word. And then you add an L, which symbolizes a lot in this dimension, especially if the first Bible that was really passed to everyone said, and the Elohim said, let us create man. Obviously, you're looking at beings that are capable of creating humans or other life forms with words, even planets with words. So we won't get too deep into that actual story. We'll just take there that worlds can be created with words. And to further back that up, we find within Hebrew and within Sanskrit, we find if you say these words in water, you actually get the actual pattern of these symbols in water. And water also is being the most acceptable way to program a reality. Of course, our bodies being 70% water, our planet being just about 70% water. You can see how it's very easy to manipulate and control things from a level of power if you understand what words to speak. And that's what we started to take apart in the book, The Code of the Matrix, which is available free from the site. We started to take apart exactly what the language really meant. What this led into for me, ultimately, is that my mind kept tumbling this information. It kept tumbling the cipher, as we call it, to find out what was really taking place here, why I'm in this reality. It wasn't that comfortable for me to just go around reality every day without having the big questions answered, which is 1, why am I here? And 2, what happens when you die? So these type of questions are what sparked the level that we've taken the resistance to, and there's all the individuals that have been involved with that. Now what it's time for is it's time for the actual totality of the information. That's what I believe 10 really stands for, is like completeness. It stands for, in this reality, its actual time system. And that's why a lot of things run in 5, 10, 15, 20, and those type of increments, especially our currency, because our system is heavily based on the number 5. If everyone understands, there's 2 correlations with the number 5. That's Venus drawing out a perfect pentagram in our sky in its precession. And also Big 5, which is Sirius, which is the dog star that is behind our sun, that is said to sometimes hack the energy from our sun to allow us to receive certain kind of information through our photons. Possibly our wavelength of perception is altered this way. So what we wanted to talk about first was we wanted to talk about the history of this world and what exactly is going on in mythology. What was going on this planet before all these things that we're seeing now started to take place. And what you automatically should get the visual of is deep, dark womb. And the reason is because everything begins from what they call the prima mater, or the magma, or the mater, which is more or less like a dark matter in itself. And to only get an idea of what this is, somewhat in a fractal, not completely what it is, because no one's been able to determine what dark matter completely is. But if you can imagine, in this world, there was no land masses. It was completely water, for better lack of words, and there was no light. So this is where the term of the unbegotten really came from, because what you still discover in science right now is that if you put water in a petri dish and you let it sit there, of course the water, they say, will become susceptible to bacteria, and life will begin to sprout from that bacteria. First it'll be mold, then it'll be different advanced types of molds, fungus, and then it'll start to move up from there, supposedly. Well, in totality, we want to ask the question, does this completely equal a man or a woman after the fungus goes trillions of years into evolution? But the thing is that what we really have to look at is that on our planetary system, there were things that were already here moving about in the deep. And they call themselves the unbegotten, or chthonic, or nighttime beings. The totality of the energies that you call nocturnal sprouted forth in a place that was basically what they will call a primordial soup swamp, something of this nature. And so this is the beginning of Earth's cycle. And this is probably the beginning of many planetary systems' cycle. But the difficulty is becoming now is how to determine how this is created within a larger being's mind. Because what we're literally having to accept right now is that this whole reality as we see it is constructed by something that they would like to call architects. But in all actuality are just higher life forms that understand a few basic concepts. Which is one, nothing really dies when it's carrying the spark of energy that was given to this whole galaxy by a source in which everyone that is in pursuit of energy is in pursuit of, because it's just pure energy. The dogma behind all of that, meaning the bottom parts of the pyramid and the individuals involved, are why you get the high amounts of stories and figures that you get in the history of our world, which we now have understood that the ancients who had all of these levels of higher knowledge were zoomorphing many versions of the energy so that it became more of an encryption to keep the knowledge of those energies away from people who didn't deserve it. It would lead them into profaneness. So if people didn't understand that the L of the serpent was just their terminology for electric energy, which hisses and bites, and went into worshiping the serpent, that was because they were automatically probably using the energy for something that was only going to benefit them. It was a selfishness to how you were going to try to become elect, or what they call electricity, or elevated, etc. So this L. So what we're looking at here now, and what this was really building up to, was how the invasion began to take place. This prima matter, this darkness, this womb of Earth has these archetypes inside of it, we'll say. We'll say everything that you can see, and they like to call this just Leviathan, that it was just a huge serpent with everything inside of it, because the myth is that the serpent will try to eat everything. It will try to, if it gets big enough, swallow everything and keep everything inside of it. And so what was inside was all the archetypes, or some were also outside. The serpent was not the most superior beast. In fact, the lion was, and that's why there was a whole mating early with the lion and the serpent, so that they could take the strongest energies and put them together, because there was going to be a war. What took place on this planet, if you notice that all the animals were not domesticated when man started to really get into his growing and his growth of cultivating land. He had to domesticate all the animals, meaning the animals were actually wild. So that also shows in the Sumerian text, when it looks like clearly more like humanoid type beings have come to Earth, and they have to wrestle with these animals first for control of Earth. Now, what this is really about is because there's one being that in particular that they talk about more than anyone, the one who won all the awards, which is called Marduk. And this is later on ends up becoming Jesus Christ. This figure Marduk, who's also Jupiter, basically came to this planetary system under a command to subdue it. And the most interesting part about this story is that how it's been painted in mythology definitely is that there was a war taking place between these gods and them using a rod that later on became symbolized as the Triton or the Dorje, or a rod that has 3 points that shot out lightning. And that's why these gods became called lightning gods, which in the deeper text it says that it had the ability to knock stars from heaven and knock angels from heaven. So apparently it was some type of advanced weaponry, some type of net, also a beam or weapon that could paralyze even some of the greater beings. And this became also called the Uranus, which was the fire-spitting Uranus, which was a particular type of cobra in itself. So basically what we saw that the indigenous, or the ones that were primordial, or predators as they're called, were into higher levels of things, and that's where things began to spawn, because these beings are still the totality of everything that you see human beings have split off into now. So what was taking place is on this planetary system, they had to basically terraform it. And that's a term that's even used now, and that's something that they say that they're already complete with on Mars, is terraforming it and making it habitable for humanoids, not necessarily the beings that already live there. They will sometimes have to adapt after many of them die off, but the humanoid knows exactly what it needs to get to a planet to continue to produce its spice. We're looking at our planetary system literally becoming a place where life is being cultivated. So what literally happened here is that this was a place called Tiamat, or in the ancient books Tiawatha, and in the other books just Ma'at, and possibly just Watha, later on becoming Gaia, later on becoming Maya, and even Terra, which is the names that were continuously handed to Earth, which is really URTH, as it began its changing process, because everything you call a planet at a certain point changes the planet from what it used to be to what you're saying it is, because that's what words do. Words shape worlds. So what happened here was that the being in charge, Marduk, who was also called Ra, who had one beam. He's depicted as a one-eyed cyclops, at times having one beam in his forehead of a radar of some sort, some type of laser that became his weapon to war against the beings that were here and subdue them and put them under control. But there were also other beings fighting here beside the animals, what we're actually calling the wind and things of that nature, which when you study deep into the occult, you find that those are living beings too, and those became the elementals. So if you're looking at Earth pre-history, you're looking at a planet of elementals where advanced beings would have to intrude, like a straight line, like an L, or angle, which is also an anagram for angels, into an orb. The same process you see when a woman's is taking a woman's egg is taking in the male semen, intrude into the actual planet. So when this took place, the first thing that had to be subdued was the shore, because there was no land masses. So they say the biggest war that took place here was a great I guess I want to use the word collusion, because what's literally happening is mountains are smashing into each other just so that their land mass is raised, so the water is back down. So that's why they say mountains at times are symbols of what they say it's in feng shui, they say mountains are symbols of hindered energy. basically, where something has collided. And so what we saw here is we saw the shores and the landmass being put back, but these are actually living beings, so they're looking at what's doing this to them as we're at war with this being. And so, as the mythology goes, Jupiter went to war with all of the elementals and all the beings and subdued them. How this came to form on Earth was through the many successions of what we're now looking at as Christianity, but were the ancient rites of not only Tammuz, not only Ninus, not only Buddha, or in some cases Krishna. So what you're looking at was a redundified story of the war that went on with this planet before it was tamed, for better lack of words, and the beings who were responsible for taming planet Earth. So this becomes very difficult to take sides after a while, because if you're looking at how man builds structures and buildings all in the mountains, and he cuts stone and he disposes animals and different things of that nature, and you're on that side, then you can easily say, well, if a person looking at it, they can say, well, I don't like what's happening here on Earth with us tearing up the environment. But if you're on the other side and you know that this is what has to happen anytime that you're creating a world, then you're looking at the bigger picture. So that's what the two factions exist with on this world is that the never-ending battle that goes on between destruction and creation. And each person tries to take this role. One, the God says at times, I'm creating life, I'm spawning, I'm bringing new existence and new planets and new beings. And then the prime matter, which is they say moves about unconsciously and really realizes all this stuff is going on, it knows that it's the matter for everything. And so they say that the birth of a world is the death of a God. That's what it says in the ancient books. The birth of a world is the death of a God, because generally the God, as everyone knows this term, is the world. It's a living being, and you're on top of it. So this makes perfect sense when you start looking deeper into a lot of things, especially the fractals of our existence. So moving on from there, you have the God world, Tiamat, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, going to war with a larger planet, clearly Jupiter, Marduk, Ra, who has a net, science, genetic science to terraform planets, to get spice going, to start going into the resources of the planet and getting everything cultivated, because of course these beings will have the technology to determine what planets were the most ripe, for better lack of words, for this kind of activity. Notice they even in Christianity term what they do a harvest when it's time for them to collect the souls, and this type of terminology they're called fishers of men, carpenters, and farmers. This is the archetypes on what you have existing here. So what you had was you had different sides. And what we're going to get into now is we're going to get into, because this is actually not going to be a long show, this show's only going to be at the most an hour, but what we're going to get into is we're just going to get into a few things that we're just going to put as the Reptilian Agenda 101. What exactly is going on here now with Earth's phase and what's going on with the status? Now that we already understand where it came from, apparently it was created within the mind, that words spoken from these beings that understand how to create things within their minds create realities. It also gave all the beings inside of them, especially the first ones out, the ability to do the same thing, meaning that the first ones that were next in line to the Most High also gained many abilities to create worlds, and it kept spawning down. And then where we're at right now as even a species, since we're supposedly the crown of creation as humanity, is we're on the brink of discovering how to do that ourselves, as long as we don't become hindered within the same war that's been going on, which was what they call the vendetta, which is the war between those that were originally on this planet and those beings and how they existed versus what the world has become now with all the different beings that are now on it. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about this alien invasion. What's really been talked about now is that there's going to be a return on this planetary system of people that have a higher level of knowledge, and they're coming to save Earth. And this is what's being passed around, and it's starting to become viral as the world is becoming a lot more sensitive to hearing things like that, versus in its old days it would just reject something like that altogether as buffoonery. But as we get more to a level of wanting something to happen and wanting something better to happen for this earth, a lot of people have become a lot more inquisitive about whether we could be visited by extraterrestrials. What this leads into is we need to explain now to humanity that the extraterrestrials have always been here, and that the faction itself that's representing itself as the ones to be channeling the beings that are on their way have been none other than the faction that has continuously been holding back the information that aliens have already been here. What this is really about is we'll get into just a brief history of extraterrestrials. You see already that the entrance of the Elohim inside of our galaxy, which are said to be connected with the planetary system of Orion, have already seeded Earth as a planet or a plant. This comes in the form of fertility gods. This is how it's stated in mythology, because they look at gods of fertility as being the birth of life, this is like the phallicism that exists within mythology. Now, if you notice men, if you go into Google and you type in men or MEN, Egyptian deity, you'll see that this deity has its phallus erect and ready to see. So this is what you're really looking at when we call a splashdown, which is when other beings are coming, they call them star seeds, from other planets and literally land into these planets. And now this is how it starts to take place, because it all takes place in the mind. When you come from space, you don't have a body, because the body can only go 70,000, 80,000 feet high before it begins to freeze or it can't breathe. So it's obviously that the body, the physical body itself, is confined to the earth. So as long as you have the physical body and you're using that to actually travel outside Earth, the most you can do is go on a ship, a physical ship. But what the human body is also equipped with is a spiritual body, which has the ability to navigate the stars. So what we're literally dealing with here is that inside of us, we have this ability to star travel to places, and we sometimes do that in our dreams. Some people do this more naturally. Some people have taken a little bit more time doing it, and some people can't do it at all, and they're just learning how. So where we're really at is we understand that our ability is to actually jump into other realities. And the only way that you can see that really happening is to start understanding that everything starts to happen first in a person's mind. And so a person can be invaded within their mind, and that's anytime you learn Saturnalian knowledge, which I call the saints or the satans or the satyrs on Saturday. Anytime you learn that knowledge, you become that. You become from Saturn. If you learn Venusian knowledge, from Venusian initiations to the son of Venus, which is Amor, to all the different knowledge that comes from that, the Luciferian concept, then you become from Venus. So that's really what you're dealing with when we're talking about there's not just the system of knowledge that comes from these planets, but also their essences, because every time a rock or a stone or a frequency or a sound or even a word comes from outer space and somehow gets uttered, brought here, or whatever, because it all starts to happen on a fractal, then we have the ability to become affected by that. And so Earth as a planetary system has been affected heavily by a lot of different life, and now it is what it is. You have different people that are mixed with various star systems. So what we're looking for now is we're looking for something universal. So anyone that has a story that's based on their idea and their particular race and how they want to see things from their particular planetary system, then that's going to be a problem because it's not universal. So we're going to highlight a couple of these things now happening within what we're dealing with now with what I'm calling the inception. And I believe here I can actually switch this from video to the screen, which is awesome. So let's take a moment here to get a thumb drive to make that happen, since I've now seen that we can do that. And let's get some of these pictures up from what exactly we have here, because what we're also doing is we are still, for those that are just coming in the show, we're broadcasting that positive healing DNA activation frequency over the internet with the equipment that you see in the background, but we're going to get you a better shot of that. And I've taken the dish, I've got the RF receiver, I've got the GB4000 and the amplifier fully cranked up, and what we're doing is we're just broadcasting over this city this DNA change, and I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the programming as far as getting people onto the level of being in the know, because we're the aliens that are here. That's what we're starting to figure out, is that those who go deeper figure out, oh, we're from the stars, so that makes you an alien. But the thing is that if you're being incepted, if you're being told what kind of alien you are, and someone is forcing that information on you, and you adapt that information that's not universal, it's going to be detrimental. Because the things that we want to introduce are things like universal languages, like the cymatics, things that are going to bring us into a higher level, getting a thumb drive, bring us in a higher level as a unit, because we have to be able to get the person who speaks another language that's not ours into the know. And so if everyone would just hold on for just a brief moment, I'm going to get this hard drive onto the screen, and we're going to get some of these photos so that I can have a little bit more support here on what exactly is taking place on the dimension. The alien invasion is happening now. It's very interesting to be living through it. I can definitely say this must be some type of benchmark for humanity, because if we're just realizing it, that's actually a benchmark for us. And so what I want to make everyone clear on today, after we're done with this particular program, I just want everyone to be clear about the invasion that is happening, and how it's happening, and how it is going to continue to spread if we don't stop it, and what it's spreading will equal. And I think I'll actually be able to do this in a phenomenal way, because you'll be able to get a little bit of this feed. But let's just see how this works. Okay, let's see if we can get this blown up a little bit more. And then we're going to go on a tour with Sevan. And this is not even in order, but I can show you how, with every single picture here, I can explain to you exactly what's happening on the planetary system with the new alien invasion that they're saying is happening. But there's a reason for this, and this is about neo-Nazism, honestly. It's something that is the V for vendetta. What the vendetta really is how the Nazis lost the war. And the thing is that some have to ask whether or not they really lost, for the simple fact that it could have been a deeper op to lose anyway, meaning that there was more that was supposed to be at stake if they wanted a deeper part of the goal, meaning to get control of the children, to get control of a lot more things. Then you would false flag, you would make like you lost, and then embed deeper why everyone thought you were gone. The interesting part about it, if you understand how many people were in Germany and how many people were with the Nazi Party, you understand that all those people aren't dead, and many of those people have not changed their way of thinking. That's guaranteed. They're carrying on a plan because many are swarmed by the vendetta. So this picture here is of Dietrich Eckert, who is the individual that influenced Hitler from the what we like to call the handler level, Hitler's handler, because there was an occult nature to everything they were doing with the Third Reich. However, they needed certain people to do certain things, and there was an issue with who was going to carry all this esoteric knowledge and become a leader, because you got to realize if you carry a large level of esoteric knowledge, it's only going to be a matter of time before you start to realize exactly where you stand in the whole thing. And so the fact of Masonry and many of the different societies is that they compartmentalize information. They only give a person a small amount so that the person doesn't have the whole story, so they start acting on the small amount before they get the story, and they're told to do this in trust. So the next picture here is of the actual Masonic tracing board, which is when joining Masonry, one eventually learns how to trace this out from the mind, but they start off by doing this freehand. And in all this, there is the actual symbols of Masonry. But you see the cross being the first, well, you see the G, which is the compass of the square, right there on the podium, and there's a ladder. And then there's a 7-pointed star that's right on the top. And I want everyone to remember this particular part of the tracing board, because this is what's going to explain a lot about what's going on with the fates and the system of Pleiades. So what you're literally dealing with here is you're dealing with first the G, which stands for geometry and gravity. It's the ability when there's no gravity, one is not held to the earth. So the next step they show up the ladder is Christianity, and one understanding that. And then the next step they show up the ladder is an anchor, simplifying the gods of the sea, the fishes of men, Poseidon, Neptune, etc., the Dagon, the fish gods. The next thing is the chalice, which is the crest of the grail, overcoming the dragon or the actual Leviathan. And then the next thing is your fate, which is the 7 sisters, the star, the Pleiades, the 7-pointed star. So that's the tracing board. As we go on, we see Dietrich Eckart and Hitler here in a photo together. They definitely were always with each other. And from that, there was the National Socialist German Workers' Party that was formed. This became the Neo-Nazi Party and many things under the same umbrella. In addition to that, Ultima Thule was formed, which you're also seeing the actual logo of here. And these societies were formed to be set to two different parts. And I will go a little slow on this video, these pictures, just in case it's taking a time to ship. And also, we'll actually have to program another frequency here in a moment, which will be RNA. So if everyone will hold on for just a moment, we'll do that. Okay, we got 637 hertz, that's RNA. We got to get both of those channels going on. Maybe a lot of people talk about DNA, but they never talk about RNA. It's like a one-way freeway. If you only got DNA, you need your RNA together. So we got the RNA going, and here we are. So Ultima Thule, of course, forms under the Neo-Nazi Party. You've seen all these symbols before, especially in modern times now. Thule is formed. So the branch of Thule was really responsible for collecting what was necessary for these group of beings to find out how they can get not only into this dimension, but into multiple dimensions and beyond. Understanding they did not have this knowledge. And what's interesting is that when channeling in certain levels of the Enochian, as the individuals that have come forth and said that they're involved in that, which is a very complex language, and Illuminati being involved, John D, etc. When getting, and then also the Stargate itself having Enochian sigils on it, just to give you the clue of what goes on with the language. So what they said was that when they finally got this thing to work, and this is not in Stargate, this is in the actual annals of what went on with Nazi Germany and the Giesens, etc. When they got the gate open, the first thing they said is that the beings were very disappointed about having their space invaded. The game Space Invaders. And what they say happened after that is that the level of communication that happened after that was basically only perceived by when they say maybe one or two individuals that were actually a part of that experiment, and the rest of them died. So the information that ultimately was finally transcribed, which they say finally came to them through AWAS, which is a being that we'll see later on in this, was that in order for their particular race, because this race that we're talking about are very related to what we would call fallen angels, they, in channeling Enochian, which is talked about in the Enochian text, that the fallen angels need Enoch to write a repentance for them. Repent meaning gaining back your feathers or gaining back the power of the pentagram. They needed to get this power back so that they could get back from their fallen state, because they were somehow trapped in a lower frequency, and the beings that did this to them were supposedly magi and magicians and high-level Atlanteans, etc., that were working for the faction that they rebelled against. So in this communication, what was conveyed is that they were going to need to get in touch with certain levels of power and energy, like certain artifacts. So Ultima Thule set out to gather these types of artifacts, which were the Ark of the Covenant, the Spear of Longinus, and scrolls from the Vimanas, which were the Tibetan scrolls. And there was importance for this. Ark, as a term, is basically a holder of information, a ship, a boat. And if you understand what Noah's Ark was about, it said go into Noah's Ark 2 by 2, meaning that get these beings together 2 by 2 so we can make them and create an ark. But what you're really looking at is a storehouse for DNA. Instructions for God-like sciences are kept in arks. Maybe even entire planets kept inside of arks. Planets being as small as marbles compared to some of the things that actually exist out there when you see Earth compared to Betelgeuse and Antares. So collecting the ark was important because they needed a particular ark, which obviously was the power of how to control and create realities with words, which was in the hands of the tribes called the Hebrews, which later on stemmed all the way back into Naga, people that were Hindus, people in the Asiatic culture, which was the seed of civilization. So what we also watched is that there was a resonance that happens with all metals, especially gold, in the Spear of Longinus because of being worshipped for piercing the side of Christ, which was actually a victory over Jupiter. This particular spear was always idolized as being what was going to be necessary to overthrow what was controlling this planetary system. And many people prayed to it, so it carried the belief and the power of all of those people. So it was a agenda to collect that. In the Vimanas, because there was another sect of the Tibetans that were always called dark Tibetans, or the ones that actually practiced the darker forms of the Tibet or Dogen, had these particular, this level of knowledge of space travel and traveling in flying craft. As we see here that the indigenous of the Asians of these areas were already familiar with craft, and this is actually an excerpt from the Vimanas, of this ability to have these ships. And so immediately after pursuing all of this knowledge, first from a mythical level, then the Thule party starts getting involved in the more of the scientific and how to make it all work, how to cross into these dimensions by using frequency lasers. But we got to tap into the esoteric knowledge first because it's all been hidden there. So the story is that Hitler put an army of Ubermensch together to march them into the Himalayas, which never had been really traveled, where you had sanctions of monks that were basically continuing to live all their life just to protect these scrolls, because they always have to remain here on Earth for them to keep the frequency, the power, etc. The words are even written powerful in this language. So notice also that if they understand how to interpret Vimana, then they also understand how to use that language to create, which was what the Persians were deeply into. People still need to realize also that still while these people are running around figuring all this stuff out, there's already a grander being that's just watching them. Because that's exactly how this stuff got created. So we see after Nazi Germany gets a hold of much of the information from the Vimanas, they start to construct spacecraft. And then Madame Blavatsky begins to play the role of how this whole agenda is going to end up becoming more or less the new religion and the new way that everyone is to believe, or what we call a new world order. But the unfortunate part about this particular new world was it was not universal. It was partial to what they call the original, or the new, actually, root race, which was a superior being in their eyes. And they got many involved with this agenda. The interesting part about it is the people that were involved in on the agenda killed something to the tune of 120 million people in a short period of time. Mussolini, General Mao, and Hitler. And many of those people were actually the ones that pushed the agenda, of course. So what we've seen only from these individuals who are cloaking themselves under many different names, Great White Brotherhood, they are hiding behind many different things that now we're even unclear if they're completely associated with them. Meaning that when they use the swastika itself, does that mean that the swastika did not exist before the Thule party came together? Of course not. The swastika in itself was a symbol of wisdom and was a symbol of perpetual energy. But as the mind state of the population controls the meaning of the symbol's meaning itself begins to change. So there becomes a want to take all the most powerful symbols and make it one's own. That's what the party was really about, is taking the most powerful symbols and saying, we're going to use this to create our own society. So what we're looking at now is that as we continue to scroll through here, we see that the alien invasion seemed to take place more or less through time travel. Understanding now, as Dan Winter is opening up more about different things in relation to Syrian technology, that when you're dealing with a planetary system such as Earth and how easy it is to program our wavelength, when you're in linear time, meaning that when you actually have a time clock, if there's beings that are outside of that, especially sidereal beings, they can dip into time instantly and maybe alter things that were supposed to take place in the future, etc. But this is still not just as easy, just said. It has to be also done. So according to the records, a project took place in order to open up a rift in space-time between what was to be 1940 and 1980, because they sensed this faction that was interested in altering what was ultimately going to happen in the future. They sensed that this would be the most prime time to make that altercation, because obviously things like what would seem to be hippie movements actual times where people are coming together on this love concept that seems that because of that many people overpower even the meaning of the word itself and go into more of what the idea of what everyone thinks it means. It does take a lot of power to overpower a word or to completely take power of a word. Understanding, to take power of the word love would be to take power over the planet Jupiter, because Jupiter is also called Jove, a J being an L. So what's interesting is that what we find is that when you go into the indigenous world with a spacecraft of some sort that can bend space-time even for a moment and appear to them and give them directions, they can be manipulated by that. And that's why when we look deeper into the Mayan teachings of the arrival of Kukulkan, which is now became more or less a Saturnalian figure, but before then being an individual that was charcoal. So the interesting part is that what we find is an altering of history. And the reason why that has to be prevented is because then no one's going to have their real origins. I think that personally Dan Winter is the best resource for all those who find themselves of Anglo descent to understand exactly where their lineage comes from. And then in addition to that, reading books such as Anacalypse, which I'll post onto the site with the audio composition of what the original gods really looked like and where certain gods were from. Because it's a fact that many of the beings that came later on, that were not here in the beginning, went to war with the beings that were already here. Meaning that every time you see a skirmish take place on Earth, if you saw Egypt being overthrown by Rome, everyone already knew the Romans were from Mars and were already having trouble on their planet, and a faction of them needed to expand also here on Earth. Some have come with the god and all of a sudden overthrew the previous god that was in power. This happens because these beings are real. And to understand that or understand that is to get a bigger idea of what you're exactly into and what you're involved with and what's being conveyed to you at this point, because there's a reason why you're being put in the know. And so what you have here is you have a circle of individuals who began to bring forth individuals that they would just like to call Nords or Nordics, which connected very heavy back into the Druid connection of spirituality in the tree of Yggdrasil and the fairy and the elven gods. In addition to that, you also had information that was not exactly a part of these factions at all, especially when it came from Tibet and Asia, that they incorporated into their writings in order to give them more clout and ability to erase the story of what they were doing in Orion. Because these beings were originally fleeing from their source. And the most interesting part is, and this is what we're going to highlight in this new recording that we're putting together, but if you notice here on this chart, you see on the bottom right-hand corner Semyaz, as they have here as blonde and blue-haired woman. And she's a heavenly angel. But the interesting part is Semyaz actually is the fallen angel that's found in the book of Enoch as being the one that binded the other fallen angels to an oath that they would have this whole thing with women, which was having offspring by women. So there's no way Semyaz could even be a woman. But this is the direct, what I would like to now know as plagiarization to other people's histories and stories that's going to just cause everyone to get confused. Because the reality of our planetary system is that there's more people here that need to hear their story, or they're going to blow up inside of the planet, because they need to know. They need to know where they're from, they need to know what they correspond to, and when they're told information about that, if it does not resonate with them, because they've already gained that ability to have something resonate with them, then they become even more furious about not getting the correct information. So of course, as we see in the history of mankind and woman, that there's beings that have been visiting in these saucer-shaped craft and already been living here and driving around these saucer-shaped craft, which is still better than the Bentley. So the thing is that this type of craft, as we see here in this, the beam ships used by the Palladian races were the exact same beam ships that were already identified with the ones being used by Vril. And that's what we were highlighting in this new video that we're putting out now from the lady who's raised a red flag about there being an alien invasion from what appears to be none of the beings that she's affiliated with also, but she doesn't see that she's been accepted. Here's how the invasion is going to take place and is already taking place. These beings do not have physical bodies because they come from dimensions that are non-physical. When they come into our planetary system, they need to have a body. So if a person starts to practice with their knowledge and their belief system, then at a certain point, especially as for according to the star lineups and things of that nature, they can be incepted or possessed by those beings. Then those beings work half and half with the person. Sometimes it's really more like 90-10, more in the being's favor, to get things done that's in the being's agenda. Now what it appears is that probably many of the dismembered souls that have been wandering from the last time we ran across the field with the Nazis are back for another round in other bodies that are non-physical. And many of the individuals that are coming under the persuasion of these parties, such as the Theosophical Society, such as the UN and their one world order, with different beings such as Maitreya, not passing out the information that's already been here. And many people will say, well, geez, that means that you're saying that these individuals that are coming to help us are not coming to help us, and we believe they're coming to help us. I'll explain this to you. There's been multiple times that we've been introduced to technology here on our planetary system that our own citizens have created. This is coming from free energy. This is coming from multiple levels where beings on this planet have discovered things like cymatics, universal languages, how to send love in the water, all these different things, and all the government has done here is continuously shut that down. So we wouldn't really need the help of any extraterrestrial race to give us that knowledge because we already have it. The interesting part is that if these beings could do anything about what was actually going on here, if they weren't exactly the problem themselves, meaning coming to get more of our resources, coming to try to share our bodies with us, then the fact of the matter is that they would have already gotten Jupiter off of our back. Because that's what's holding this planet together, and everyone that's adept knows that. So what we have to figure out, and what we're tasked with figuring out, is what exact phase are we in all of this? So what we see is that now that the UN has come forth, understand that the United Nations and the United States are still two separate factions, and the United Nations should not be looked at as the United States. The United Nations is a jump off of the United States, using the United States to jump off into their total idea of every country coming together and being under one society. And that religion of that society is Theosophy. So, or Theosophical. So what we have here is Madame Blavatsky and the rest of the individuals that were in cahoots with her, bringing this level of knowledge into the New World Order and the movements that we're seeing in the world today, and how they believe. So we also see our space program. This is Jack Parsons here, the leader of JPL, the one who actually designed and did have the Babylonian child and actually designed some of the first rockets that we shot into other planets, or even into other, not only other places here on Earth, but also into other planets. So understanding exactly where this really comes from, this knowledge of jet propulsion has been what's fueled us making missiles, rockets, bombs to destroy things. And so it's not just been used for the ability to space travel. In fact, inner space travel and astral travel is how they do that. Space travel is a whole different thing. It's done on a different nature from not just taking an actual physical ship out into the galaxy and traveling it around like a car, but more blinking it, like they did with the actual submarine, where the submarine disappeared and then reappeared somewhere else. So understand, jumping is more what you're talking about with space travel, not leaving the dock like a regular ship and just traveling until you get there. It's more like traveling a different type of way. So as we see that our government under NASA, which is none other than the acronym NASA, or NAS is the rights of the Nazarite, or the NASA, or the Nazi, was something that they were individuals that were already carrying information about what was going on here on this planetary system. Whether those individuals were positive or negative, I would only say at this now is they probably were both, meaning that they had an agenda in mind. There was other individuals that were part of one of their factions, other part of another. Some of them didn't agree, as we see with the Operation Valkyrie, which was the idea of actually dethroning Hitler, and other Nazis having to move into the United States because they didn't like the way Hitler was doing things. There's of course the notion that they say Madame Blavatsky did not approve of all of what was going on in the Theosophical Society this point right now, and it's only because it fell into more of the darker hands of the individuals that were controlling it behind her, which she didn't even know, because she was oftentimes alone on her missions pursuing this information they sent her out to get. That's still something Blavatsky would have to come back and let us know. In addition to that, you're seeing here a picture of the 7 stars of Pleiades. It's to my understanding that these fates are all different. So it doesn't mean that all this whole Pleiadian star system is evil. It just means that there is a faction within this Pleiadian star system that has been affecting our Earth and introducing concepts that are not pro-human. Apparently, they say that may be coming from the Hathor faction. As we continue, we find that these Pleiadians, the ones that are from the particular faction that have been negative, are coming in the form of the individual that you see here on the screen, the same individual that you've seen from Hellboy, the vampiric type look. They appear majority to women, not men, even those men that were reading the same books as women. So that's what we're dealing with here on Earth, is that the alien showdown is about to take place. Because as these beings come back and start finding willing hosts, they are inside of individuals, and these individuals are on the internet. It's interesting because you would think that the aliens would be using some other technology, but the internet is their technology. And so what you find now is you'll find that individuals, there will be other blogs about things, there will be information that will be somehow steering into one way or another. But this will come from individuals that seem to have no business on the internet themselves, no computer savvy. As I was highlighting in this particular video that we were watching of this particular lady, she said that she had really no experience in dealing with computers or physics, and all of a sudden she gained the ability to do and learn physics and have the ability to use the computer from this being coming inside of her body. However, that this being was completely about its own agenda is something that we have to see, not from inside of the lady now, because she's only having the experience and she's very delighted about the experience. And so that's the gist of what's really supposed to be talked about today, is exactly how this inception is taking place. That it is a time where now the red flags have been raised. We're actually completing a video right as we speak to get this information to everyone about it, how it exactly is taking place. We're watching an actual alien invasion first taking place in the mind, which is men, or the mental, and then invading into the mind, getting the person to think all of these different things that are mainly related to one particular planetary system, but not universal. Many of those actual ideas are pro-Nazi, meaning that the idea of the actual caste system, superior beings, and things of this nature are heavily emphasized. Many of us started in our knowledge as lower beings and are completely making the procession to the higher beings. That's what we're recording here in real time, meaning that what the resistance is about is the transformation just being documented so that other people have somewhat of a guideline with adding their own sauce, their own flavor, their own frequency to it, of what exactly is taking place here on the planetary system, so they can be in the know, so they can become more fulfilled with what's taking place here in this world and get more involved, rather than being remote viewers or observers that are not willing to get involved in the reality in which they created. So what we have here is we have completely a dossier which is being put together of the actual invasion on the planetary system. Again, it's first taking place in people that are of somewhat of the New Age persuasion, that accepted the Archangel Michael coming across the grid, and the different sacred geometries and the stars of David and all these different things that they've now collected and then put into their minds. And then what that's allowed them to be is open to a faction that at this point, rather than terming it good or evil, we'll just say it has an agenda. We need to understand to this level whether that agenda totally benefits humanity. And if we are citizens of the universe and citizens of humanity, then this will be something that we will want to get involved in so that we make sure it doesn't go the wrong way. Factions like the United Nations are factions that exist within themselves making decisions. Those decisions aren't in front of everyone at this point, even though they have all the power. They have few representatives that are really coming out to explain to us exactly what are the decisions being made. But the fact of the matter is, the UN has shown from the beginning that it's none other than an offshoot of the Theosophical Society, which was very active in the neo-Nazi party. and that the scheduled alien invasion that's due here on Earth is first to take place in ships from the body, in the physical level, and then from the body, from the spiritual level, and then from the actual physical level, if this planetary system begins to accept that as their reality. And now, in this recording with this, what's really going on here on our Earth, because this is taking place in our minds, is that Earth is our body. It's obvious as you look at it on the fractal. First, the idea comes. There's other beings that are coming from other planetary systems. This is what they look like. They're here to do this X, Y, Z. We take that idea into our minds. Then, as more people begin to think about it, it sets a time clock on it on when it's going to happen. The more people think about it, speeds up the time in which it's actually going to happen. That's how consciousness is guided in this reality. So, the main thing for people to do now is hold on to exactly what you already know to be true, which is yourself. You have a direct connection with the universal energy. You are it. So if something tries to invade what you know to be going on, what you know to be the truth, which is what the resistance is about, is bringing the information of exact knowledge of what really is going on here, hold ground, because that's going to allow you to have the ability in the moment to create your reality as you want it. Because what all of these factions know is that humanity itself is going into a time in which it's going to be able to manifest. What they want to do is steer humanity's manifestation. Humanity's manifestation is guaranteed because humanity has something that's even a part of its pineal gland that lets it know when it needs to activate, so that it can jump time again, so it can get out of cycles that are going down black holes. So the thing is that what we're really dealing with now is that when that activates, we have to be very leery of going into another person's mind other than our own. Getting deeper into the parts of the occult nature that don't lead down paths that are ever going to come to a conclusion, because it's infinite down there. It's unbegotten. And so that's really what we want to broadcast here today. There's going to be a video encompassing this and what we're bringing up. Let's switch this here. And we definitely wanted to, I'm going to go ahead and take this moment that if anyone has any questions, I'm looking in the chat box now, and I can answer questions as they come. We'll take about, well, depending on how many questions we have, we can take a couple minutes for questions. As you get this, anytime you're on the line, and it's not just these machines, it's really the people, they have more. It's really, what this is really about is it's about doing it from multiple levels. Like what I decided was that, and that's how you see the resistance, is it's all these different ways of getting to a higher level. It's not just caters to one thing, and that's kind of why we had to throw the gods away in the beginning, because the gods are not universal at times. In fact, the moment you say that word, it's no longer universal, it's Germanic. So the thing is that because of that, there was going to be a problem with introducing the community to higher concepts unless that was removed. So what literally happened anyway is that we had to start from another level, and that's really what I like to document now is, and there's individuals that are involved now that we're trying to get this documentary together, is I approached it from a level of just wanting to be with it. Like when you talk about God and you talk about the love of God, and people have this, they say they love God. They have no idea at times when you really want to get close to your creator and what you really came from, and how much you really will pursue doing that if you're actually serious about it. And then that's what I started to also check myself, because the thing is that steel sharpens steel. So a lot of times we've gotten to these levels where we can't take a person's advice anymore. It's like if someone gives us advice, we get kind of pissed off that they're even saying anything to us like that, like how audacity they're even thinking they can tell me what to do. And that's how our attitudes are. So that means if you're not taking advice and you're not giving yourself advice, you're just spinning out of control. So what I started to notice is that as I started to humble myself more to reading, just to get in more of the data, but also application, because the application was really what came from the heart. It was like once I was in my heart wanting to get it, rather than just saying I need to read this and I'm going to get it from this. I can't count how many books that I went through imagining that I would eventually read it. But there was always this thing in my mind that was like, you're eventually going to get to one part of this book and you're going to read it and then it's going to change everything. But that's not how it works. In your heart, first it changes. And then your heart starts to make you able to see things that you would have never saw, even in those same books, but more importantly, in this reality, in this life. Because all of it was veiled for a moment. And that's what's so interesting to me about humanity is we can be completely in our minds thinking we know something. And this is kind of what happened 10 years ago, especially when I was deep into Christianity. And this is just a sign of humans. And this is something that I started to kind of look at myself with that look like, I'm watching you. Because I completely believed in that, thought it was true, had my own level of data, and then anything else said outside of that, I wasn't even listening, and I just looked at that as the enemy. And I kept that shield there, and I admired, and that's what Christianity teaches you, is the stronger your shield is, the more you're really a Christian. And so notice this mind job. Your mind job is creating its own shield inside of your mind to protect itself. This information that starts to unravel as you get these scriptures numbered weird ways like 316 and things of this nature that talk to different parts of your mind when you're getting flashed with crosses and sigils that are being used used on you from a level that you're not even understanding. So that's the first flag on the play, as I call it anyway, is that when you are not told how the system works, but you're told to abide by the system, you always got to get in there and figure out how it's wired together, or you're just going to keep looping in the system until you find that out, because that will, of course, be what systems would be really about, is to teach you something. The gods ran out of space because of how they started manifesting their experiences, and you watch that happen within individuals. They start to manifest themselves into corners. They want to include certain things together that don't even fit together because they're not thinking about it. It's like you want to travel hyperdimensionally, but you think you're going to do that in a physical ship, when physical ships can't withstand what's in a wormhole. And nothing physical can, because physical is like inorganic. And so it's literally where there's all these pieces now that we're able to really put together, and then we're looking at ourselves as being in this huge folly. This huge fallacy, fallacy, which is also the term of fallacy, this huge fallacy of what appears to be very inflated eagles. And that's why I know that is the symbol of many of these. They say the eagle in the esoteric works is the most hated bird, because it will run over absolutely everything to get its point across when the eagle flies alone. But it's very difficult dealing with that type of thing in a reality that's supposed to be universal and collective. Then, I noticed there was another thing. I talked about some other deeper stuff. I was noticing the other day that, why did they call HIV the hive? Like, and then I was looking at the film Angels in America, I believe it is. It's the one with Al Pacino. He has played the homosexual role. But what they were really saying is that when taking all this medication that they were getting, that they were actually going into another reality and perception of things, because it was guaranteed with all those people that caught the HIV that they were going to die. And that this medication was taking them into this other world that was preparing them for death. And this is the most interesting thing, because when you think about what a hive mind is, a hive mind has to put you on its frequency in order for you to be able to operate and to control you. And that's done through alchemy. That's done through the actual chemicals that are within medications and things of this nature. So, we're getting off into other areas that I didn't intend to talk about today, but the main thing is that what this is about to me, what this 10-10-10 is about to me, because this is also the month of my birthday, is it's a big benchmark for me, because I think, again, as a child, we saw a lot about the extraterrestrial involvement, and to be on the cusp of what is really happening, not even so much on the cusp, but actually into what is really happening, is quite a benchmark. I think that as a child, we probably would have said to ourselves, hey, I want to know, I want to meet other beings, I want to know what that's all about. I think now we're just learning to be more choicier. It's like, we now learn that, yeah, we can interface with other beings, but which one are we going to interface with? We're not being so naive to like, oh, yes, come pick us up, and take me off the planet. But the thing is the big part about when you run out of space And this is something I've been talking to a few of my friends about. But to determine this reality, because of how the numbers are in this reality, from the 4, the 8, the 62, the 16, the 32, and then you get to the 64-bit I Ching, and then you get to the 64-bit Nintendo, and you get to the 64-bit computer. You see, there's a lot related about this reality that we created within the computer, this virtual reality that runs on the same construct as our real reality. That way, someone doesn't basically have to reinvent the wheel. They just have to take it into a different way of looking at it. And that's why the movie The Matrix gave us a different perspective of looking at what was really going on. It used more of like a virtual reality standpoint. So, what we're really seeing here is these virtual realities, as we will call it, are the worlds that we're enjoying right now. There's 50 people in this virtual reality right now. And this is like a loading construct for information that's to take place in the future, and things that are taking place now. And that's the big concept around the in the know, which is what we're doing, is putting everyone into this level of information so that they can adjust themselves, because things don't end at death. And that's what's so interesting also about this information, is that it has far-reaching effects. See, the thing was that the reason why most people forget things when they die and they come back is because most of the stuff wasn't worth being remembered. That's what they talk about, the Egyptians heavily talk about, is that if you didn't learn anything strong, then it could not withstand the test of time. It could not withstand your next existence. That's how I was telling people, do you actually think Michael Jackson went into his next existence not knowing he was Michael Jackson in this life right here? Of course he went into his next existence knowing he was Michael Jackson, because you can't live like a pop star idol that strongly and not already be something. And that's what we're really tapping into now with everyone, because we're discovering that everyone is something. They just have to choose what they wish to amplify. And the best thing that you can do is amplify universal. So that what you could do is you could fit into every socket. You can communicate with every being, but from a level of you're gaining, you're sending and receiving, sending and receiving. That way the connection becomes compatible. And again, the naive way of approaching this alien event, alien shift as they were calling it, that we had to throw a flag on before with the Project Camelot, is only a deception because we already know that there's aliens here, and our government has still not got itself up, not to disclose, not getting the military officials to do it, but Obama. When that happens, that is the time in which, when it gets into everyone's mind, because then they're going to go in and start ciphering over information also. People are going to take that as priority. They're going to start logging into different networks. And the networks that actually have the most stay power, or actually the most gravitational pull, are going to be the ones instructing people. And because the United Nations has a lot of these networks, especially when it comes to adepts. Because still, you're talking about Rosicrucians, you're talking about many other branches of Masonry, but not all of them, and not all the branches of Rosicrucian. Because you got to realize that any secret society, when passing around levels of information, is also talked about amongst the individuals that are members away from the lodge or the hall or whatever. And then there's always intelligent people. And someone's eventually going to say, hey, do you actually think that evoking these fallen angels into this reality is really going to be the way to go? And then someone's going to respond, well, I don't know, because we've already taken the oath, so how is it we're going to stop something like that from happening since we've already taken the oath and we can't tell it to anyone? And then someone would say, well, is there anywhere in Merovingian law, or the law of Bar, which is the law of Saturn, in which we can find a loophole around getting that information to people? And then someone will probably say, well, yeah, we could probably create a time loop of reality that doesn't actually exist within the construct of the rules that the actual being that puts everything in control took place. So you see, there's always a way around things. And man and the gods have been very creative at finding a way around things. So that's also what we have the opportunity to do, since we are now in possession of certain levels of knowledge, is find a way around certain things that our fathers have gotten, our mothers have gotten us into from their level of what they contributed. Meaning that every time when someone looks at the reality and says there needs to be improvement, then all I need to do is work on implementing that improvement. We've never said that the reality was going to go without improvement. Meaning that no one ever said that the reality was to remain the same. Nothing remains the same, because nothing ever stops. It may move slower, but it never stops. And so that's what we're really dealing with here. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to take this time, and I don't really see any more questions here, but I will take another brief moment to answer Any other questions? Or we're going to go ahead and close out the line so I can get this video up, because time is of the essence, and I can show individuals, other than those that are actually on the line today, exactly what we're doing. We actually maxed out on this line today at 50 viewers, 50 people online, and that's our max because of, I guess, the kind of account that we have at live stream. But we're definitely going to be picking this up in a moment, and we're going to be getting this high definition dossier out to you so that you can tell others about the alien invasion.